Here is episode number 97 and episode 98. Debbie O'Shea here on the Crescendo Music Education Podcast. It's such a great place to be. I get to speak to amazing people. And today, Claire Preston is back. We were going to do one episode on Claire's thoughts on delivering music education and creating literacy through the repertoire that you choose for your choir. I'm thinking, wow, this is amazing. We need to hear this. We're going to talk about advice for choral conductors and people wanting to work with choirs. This was planned as the second episode. And if you did not hear episode 96, you should go back and have a listen because it gives you the background, her bio, that sort of thing. I thought we could do a second episode, get really into the weeds, give our listeners a whole lot of ideas and advice. Well, it worked, but it worked really well, so well that I'm actually going to cut this episode into two. So this is the second episode of 3 with Claire. I will cut our conversation in the middle-ish and then she will be back for a third episode because there are so many gems of wisdom in here. Sit back and enjoy the second episode with Claire Preston. This podcast is being recorded on the lands of the Turrbal people. I acknowledge them as the traditional owners of the land and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. They were the first music makers on this land. And on this episode of the Crescendo Music Education Podcast, I am welcoming back Claire Preston. Hello, Claire.
Hey, Debbie. Hey, everybody. Good to see you all. Great to be back.
It is so good. I loved our chat so much, but I know there's some other things I want to dig into with you because you were telling me off air about delivering music education and creating literacy through the repertoire you use for your choir. Now, that sounds to me like a huge topic. How do we even get started talking about that? And if we listen to you talking about this in a choral context, how can we transfer that to our classroom? So there you go. There's a question that you could write a thesis on.
Yeah. Well, let's see how we go unpacking it, hey? And,
okay.
And feel free to interrupt and we can go off on tangents because I'm sure I won't remember everything I want to say. And I would just say to everybody out there that, you know, I feel really humbled to be asked. I'm no expert and, you know, I'm a lifelong learner and I don't feel like I have all the answers, but, you know, I feel really humbled to be asked, you know, and I tried to put Debbie off, but, you know, she's persistent. So here I am. I feel really passionate that you know, a lot of schools are set up, they have a co-curricular program and a curriculum program. And I just think, wait a minute, we're all teaching music here. We're all delivering music education. Why is there this divide? Is it because we're doing it differently or one's more important than the other? Or like, what really is this? You know, a healthy music program is where the 3 circles overlap or intersect, you know, instrumental lessons, ensemble music making and classroom music. And I would like to think that actually those 3 things could actually be integrated in all rehearsals or all instrumental lessons or all classroom practice. So, for example, I think that repertoire is the curriculum. And obviously, you know, a healthy diet of curriculum is the most important. So, you know, we wouldn't feed our children Maccas every night. So we wouldn't give our kids, I don't know, pop music all the time or music theatre all the time or whatever, you know. It's really important that unless you choose repertoire that is of integrity and depth and breadth, then how do you teach those, what I think are the higher order innate music skills? How do you teach that if your curriculum can't deliver that? So I have high expectations of curriculum. Anyway, so getting back to the actual rehearsal, I also think that I've worked a lot with adult choirs, and a lot of conductors who say, my adults can't read. And then I say, well, why not? Oh, they just can't read. Yes, but they've been a member of your choir for 10 years. How come they can't read? And I would say the same thing about children, students. If a child has been in your choral program for 4, 5, 6 years, and the child says, oh, I can't read music, why not? So I see that as the responsibility of the educator. And there's lots of fun ways to approach music reading, and it doesn't need to be scary. It doesn't need to be boring. It doesn't need to be theoretical. It can be really integrated into the approach, the way you learn the music. Otherwise, if you don't teach the children to read, then every single time they start learning a new piece of music, it's like Groundhog Day. It's like we're just starting from the beginning again. It's like every single lesson, we're learning a new piece of music, we start again. So it's like your program's not growing, your program's not developing, you're not teaching transferable skills, the children are not becoming more confident and literate. You're just teaching another song, and you're starting from scratch every single time.
That is so well put. That if you ever want an argument for literacy, it's there, isn't it? You just don't want to have to start from scratch every single time.
And I think, I don't really know what, I mean, I've seen educators teach by ear, and I've tried to figure out why they do that, and I'm not against it, but why would you do that exclusively? Is my question. Are you doing your students any favors? Is it because you think they can't read music and therefore you don't attempt it? Is it because you think it's quicker? Is it because you just think it's easier? But if you're only teaching by ear or by rote, then that's all you'll ever do. You'll never get past that. And every time you pick up a new piece of music and you go to teach it by rote, it's just same. So I think it's good for our students to be able to, I mean, I guess if you make the same argument for reading, you know, our children come to school and they've been learning language by ear, but then we teach them how to read. And so, and they continue copying language that they hear around them, but they're also learning to read. And their reading's not as good as their ear. And their ear continues, and then their reading comes up, and then eventually the two are sort of, you know, almost equal. And so I feel the same way about teaching music. You know, in the early stages, it's just like in the classroom. The early stages, they know their skips and their steps. And that is sufficient language. You know, if you choose a piece of music that is age appropriate and developmentally appropriate, you can talk about, is that phrase going up or down? Oh, right. Does it sound like a scale? Is it going up by step? Is it going down by step? Are there any skips in there? Are there any leaps in there? I talk about form. I use same, similar, different, which is all language that us Kodai teachers use in our classroom, but I use it in all my repertoire when I'm teaching. And I might teach theme A, because I like to chunk things in separate rehearsals. And most sections might have 4 phrases. And so then we use our fingers, phrase 1, phrase 2, phrase 3, phrase 4. And which, is it A, B, A, C? Is it A, B, A variants? I use that language. Does the B phrase feel finished or is it unclosed? Does
Mm.
does phrase 4 sound finished? Why? Oh, it finishes on the home note. Oh, tonic, right? Okay, that's
Mm.
how we feel like we've come home. And so I use all of this language because I've been given time at school with students in front of me, and I think they deserve more than just learning songs. And I think when it comes to advocacy, if all we're doing is teaching songs, then it's going to be easy for people to say, oh, well, anybody can do that. We don't need a music specialist for that.
Mhm.
But no, we're teaching music, we're delivering music education, and we're giving them skills that are transferable. So, other language, a variant, obviously. Well, that phrase was similar, but it was a variation. Well, what was the variation? Oh, well, those notes they were sort of ornamented, or it was like a little turn, or they just added. Why did they add those notes? Oh, for interest or color, or well, then how are we going to sing that to make it sound more interesting than A? Or why is? I talk a lot about what do you think the composer was trying to achieve? What what's the effect of this? What was the purpose? Why do you think the composer chose to do that instead of that, or didn't repeat it exactly and did it this way? Or I talk a lot about word painting and connect the text to the melodic line, and or we talk about the harmony. Oh, wow, that chord was so amazing, and it's on that word. And is it because maybe it was a storm or something, or it was unsettled, or it didn't resolve, or it's a beautiful warm chord and the sun's coming out, or I just think that's where the meaning is and the music is. And if I love to unpack all of that with my choir. I love having the children think,
Yes.
teaching them to think, teaching them to ask, teaching them to listen actively, so that they know what they're listening for. Because I respect them, they're intelligent, they're capable of all of this. You can make it age appropriate. We talk about the poetry. And how has the composer set the poetry? How has the composer chosen to write that melodic contour for that particular phrase? Or how is the chorus different from the verse? Or what's the tonality? Why is this finished piece? Why are all the finished pieces in minor keys? Well, because it's dark most of the year, and people are all really languid, and so, well, then what vocal color would we use to communicate that? Or why is the first time we hear the chorus in this particular key, and then the next time it's in this key? What do you hear or feel is different? And then and then the children say, oh, well, it feels more important, and it's gone up by step, and now it's in a really bright key because they're sharps, and so now it's more exciting because it's getting towards the end, and this is different. And then they inherently, they just know when they're delivering it what they're trying to achieve, and they're not just repeating it again. It's actually got a whole different meaning because it's in a different key. And yeah,
So part of this is talking about also making sure the music is in front of them. Like, I know this is a bit of a
yes,
no-brainer the way we're talking, but
yeah,
if we go back to the way that we work in really busy primary schools where
mm-hmm.
we're teaching all of the kids and doing this and the playground duties that they haven't taken off us, even though they should, because we're doing all this choral stuff. And
Correct,
you just go, I'm just teaching this, and I have no budget to buy the scores
right,
and blah, blah, blah. So
right.
I'm just teaching this. It's really important, even if all you can afford is like one, let's get the music in front, the scores in front of the kids. And
You know what? Yeah, no,
it's really, really, really important, I believe,
it's
to
so
have those
important.
scores. And I think Kath's really, I'm very lucky because I work at a school where I have Kath Reilly as my choral conductor. I take one choir. I tell them they're the most important choir. They're the
Yes,
yeah.
of
Well,
course.
but they are. They're the grade ones and twos.
That's where it all starts.
Aren't they the
Do you
most
know
important?
they are? Do you know what? All of the Australian composers whose music I've been teaching over the last 5 years, they are all incredibly kind. When I say to them, "This is my plan," I'm not photocopying your music. I'm going to project just the vocal line on the TV. So I'm fortunate that I have a TV in all of my teaching rooms, and some of them are mounted to the wall. Now, I like that because that means that the children are looking up, and I just project just the vocal line. I don't have to put it into Sibelius. I used to have to do that. I used to spend hours putting scores into Sibelius, but with the kindness of e-prints and PDFs from composers now, Australian composers, and e-prints, I can just extract just the melody line. And that means that with my special teacher pointer, I can literally point, I can enlarge it on the TV screen, and I can point and they can track it, and then we can, anyway, so they're reading is basically what I'm trying to say.
Yes.
And then we can unpack it. And because I'm tracking it for them, there's no issues around them holding a scrunched up piece of music and they're looking down and then they're not focused and they're not engaged and they're getting lost. It's none of that. So the types of ways I teach something is I might sing the first phrase. I might sing the first phrase, or I might sing the first 4 phrases, and then we might discuss bits and pieces about it. Or I might say things, we just play games. I might say, "Can you follow the music while I sing? And then when I stop, can you tell me what the last word was I sang?" So then I know they're tracking. Or I'm going to sing, but I might leave out some words. Can you put your hand up if I leave out a word? Or I might be silly and I might replace a word and they think that's hysterical and I might put a silly word in there and hands are up, Or when I stop this time, can you tell me the next word that I was about to sing? I mean, you can ask them any question, really. Honestly, you can ask them. The point is that they're tracking. They're literally following it. Sometimes you might just read through the poetry before you begin. Sometimes, and always read the poetry in rhythm. But just this, or you might ask them, how many words start with a particular letter? How many words start with S? Or tell me the last word of each sentence, or show me where the rhyming words are. I mean, anything. The main thing is you're actually teaching them to read and they just think it's a big fun game. So it's really simple. It's incredibly simple. And I just love projecting things on the TV because I can enlarge it and I can track it for them.
And the more literate they are, the more you can add to that fun game, because that sounds very like the score detective type games. And you can just go, who can tell me the first word that's on an E?
Exactly.
So you can link it more and more to the music literacy, the more the children know.
Correct.
What
And
note does the second phrase start on?
exactly.
Beat of the bar is the first rest. So, like you said, they're just games.
They're just games.
Mm-hmm.
And, how many treble clefs are there? Or, what's the time? See, one of the pieces we're learning Jack and Poi at the moment. Oh, look at, it goes from 3/4, and then 2/4, then back to 3/4. Oh, right. And so, and then you can talk about the contour, the shape. Oh, are all the notes? Oh, they're all going up, right? Oh, now they're all going down. Oh, there's this little twist at the end. Oh, yeah, right. And are all those notes next door? Oh, yeah, they're all next door notes. Oh, but wait a minute. Who can tell me which words where there's a skip? And so it's just all games, but honestly, they love it and their capacity for it is great. And in that process where you're unpacking all of this, they're hearing those melodies over and over and over. And then boom, first time they sing it, it's right because they've heard it lots.
Mm.
So then you don't rush in to them reproducing it and it might be wrong, and then you find yourself undoing stuff. So you keep modeling it, they keep hearing it, you're unpacking it, you're discussing it, they're finding the words, they're finding the dynamic markings, they're finding whatever you want. But by this stage, you've been singing it for a good solid 5 or 10 minutes. They've heard it. And then I'll bet money that the first time you ask them to sing it, it'll be pretty much right.
That's very, very sneaky, effective preparation.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. That's it. That's exactly what it is. Yeah.
But I
So,
think that people in the situation when they're in primary schools and they're frantically doing that huge bit of work and then trying to squeeze in choir. Like, I know that was me, and I'm in a privileged position now where I have Path doing 4 of our choirs and I just do 1. But it's often the last thing that you think about because I don't have to write reports on choir. Um, like, so the pressures of the curriculum delivery, etc. But if we all thought, maybe this is just me uh musing on things you're saying, if we thought more about choir being just, not just, I shouldn't say just, being a music education lesson. If we,
correct. That's exactly how I think of
yeah,
choir. I think of it as a music lesson, and the music is a means to an end. The repertoire is the vehicle for me to deliver music education, and the repertoire is a vehicle for my students to become more literate.
mm,
Uh, and that's why when the process is strong and deep, the performance just takes care of itself.
yeah, I do like that. That makes so much sense. So how do you choose this repertoire? Now, I know part of the answer already because you've said lifelong learner. And honestly, lifelong learner here, like high five.
Yeah.
But you go to rehearsals, you watch other people's rehearsals, you go to concerts. How do you find the repertoire and what sort of filters do you apply?
Okay. Yeah. Um, the text is really important. The text is number one. This is how we're different from an orchestra or any instrumentalist. So the text has to be age appropriate. It has to be engaging. They have to be able to understand it. I would never do anything that has an inappropriate message. Um, and songs that I would choose for all boys compared to all girls, compared to co-ed, might be slightly different. But always, the text is always number one, and the message is always number one. The length of the phrases is probably number 2. So with young singers, I wouldn't ever choose something where the phrase was too long for them to sustain. Otherwise, you're not setting them up for success. So the vocal line the intervals within the vocal line need to be achievable for their age, and they need to be intervals that they can navigate without difficulty. Because really, we're trying to develop a healthy vocal technique, and so we want the repertoire to be achievable. We don't want to have them singing music that is beyond them vocally, and then we're spending our rehearsals trying to fix things that wouldn't have happened if we hadn't have chosen that piece of music. Sometimes some music is too rhythmically demanding for young children, so we have to be really careful with the rhythmic content. All of our Australian writers get that right. I think they're fabulous, but sometimes some of the American Hal Leonard publications, you've got to be really, really careful. Sometimes if it's a bit too much of a pop song or music theatre, the rhythm is really syncopated, and you're just not setting up your kids for success when they're little. The the tessitura, the range, the vocal range is so important, where it sits in their voice. And I would encourage people, don't be afraid to change the key of something. I've just started teaching a piece that I love, that a colleague recommended to me, but I just thought it was a little bit too low. And so I wrote to the composer and I said, look, I'm not sure if you wrote this specifically for a group, if it was commissioned, if there was a reason it was in this key, maybe it was a flat key and you liked those colors. Are you okay with me popping it up? And no problem, he said, I'll send it to you in the new key. And I'm thrilled because it's sitting in the range that I want. I mean, there are some sweet spots in the children's range depending on the age. For a year 3 child, it's a different sweet spot. For a year 4, it's different again for 5, 6s. And so for me, I want to be developing, I want to be achieving that beautiful spin and ring, that really free, open, resonant sound. And that happens in their sweet spot. So I want the tessitura to be sitting in that sweet range. If it's not, then you're never going to achieve the colors and the vocal tone and the freedom that you can. And it's very easy to choose repertoire that sits too low for our children. So that's just a little, be careful there, Otherwise, if it's too low, they're just going to grunt, and when the teacher asks for more sound, they're just going to push and they're just going to become shouty. And then boom, they're not in their singing voice anymore. Because they'll try hard and they want to give more, and then boom, they can't achieve that beautiful singing head voice that you want to be developing. Always developing, bringing the voice down, never up. Accompanied or not accompanied?
That is the question. No.
Yeah. And I know some of us aren't
interested in your answer. I'll tell you mine after you've told me yours.
I think with babies, with preps through to year 2, I would teach everything unaccompanied. I think it's key for them to be able to hear their voice. Otherwise, they can't match pitch. So when they're sitting really close to their friends, and if everybody's singing too loud, they actually can't hear their own voice. I'm interested in creating as many opportunities in a setting like that where they can sing on their own, because they can't actually hear whether they're singing in tune unless they sing it on their own. So small groups is better. Oh no, that's a luxury. But by where will we go? What was your question? Oh, accompanied or not? Yeah. So I would put year 3 in that category. I mean, by year 3, most schools have a year 3 choir, and most schools will perform with the accompanist. But so much of that learning can take place without the piano. They don't need the accompaniment. However, when you've got the right accompanist, man, oh man, what they can add. They can add all of the phrasing and the subtleties and the nuances that would take you months to teach. They can just do it. If from the very first time you hear them play, it's got all of that. It's got the spirit of the piece. That's what the children are going to absorb. So for me,
can I just add in there, when you've got an accompanist that actually isn't one, it can destroy a piece.
Correct. And it's better to work without them in a situation like that. Yes. My view is that the accompanist's role is not to bash notes. It's more important that the conductor is vocally demonstrating how they want the phrase to be expressed, and the quality of the tone and the vowel shape and the word painting and the emphasis on particular words, and all of those colours come from the modelling. That none of that comes from the accompanist. And part of that literacy is developed with the children's inner hearing, and you don't achieve that if you, as a conductor, you're relying on the accompanist to bash the notes or play the notes, or if you're training the children to rely on hearing it from the piano. And of course, I've worked with some very fine secondary school choirs that have been trained very diligently to rely on the accompanist, but then of course they all sing behind the beat because they're waiting to hear it first. So we want to develop that inner hearing and that ability for our students to pitch the notes with help that doesn't come from the accompaniment. The great things that come from the accompaniment is the harmonic language and the harmonic color. And so look, I think with our young children in year 2 and year 3, and we're introducing partner songs and canonic singing, and that's how we're getting into our part singing and our harmonies. It's so important to do all of that. We don't need the accompanist for that. And again, it would just depend on the repertoire. And I know some schools need to work with a backing track, and which is, I sort of have mixed feelings about that. But look, I think it really comes down to, I also believe that with year 2s and year 3s, it's really important to teach unison singing.
Yes.
And to not rush into parts. And a unison song can be made incredibly beautiful with an effective accompaniment. And that's a gorgeous experience for the children because they can't replicate that harmonic language. And that's where the harmonic language can be quite sophisticated and beautiful and make their unison melodic line sound incredibly artistic. So anyway, they're just some thoughts about accompaniment.
Yeah, no, I agree with those. And having been in situations most of my career where I've worked without, just in state schools with little or no budget,
Yes.
you do the choirs. Then if you are going in a competition or something that requires an accompanist, then you beg to have the money to pay for the accompanist to come for 1 or 2 rehearsals and to come to the performance. And it's always like so exciting when the kids get to hear it with an accompanist. So you make it work. But I think teaching and rehearsing, like you said, orally without an accompanist,
Yeah.
really, although you might see someone rehearsing with an amazing accompanist going, aren't they lucky? Which they are, because a good accompanist will let you do all of your things and join in when needed, adding
Yeah.
artistry. But it's really not that bad not having an accompanist. You know,
No,
if you're an educator.
correct.
Mm.
Correct. There's something you said there. I had an idea and I've lost it. You were talking about. No, I've lost it. Oh, what a shame. And we talked about age-appropriate repertoire, and that is really important. And I'm not so worried about trying to choose repertoire that the kids know or like, dare I say, because I don't rely on that. I don't worry that that's the only reason they're going to attend.
Mm-hmm. And
I
I think there's
yeah,
a danger in that, because I
yeah,
know someone mentioned something came up in a little discussion in one of my classes, and someone mentioned Taylor Swift.
right,
And there was this huge reaction from a small group of kids going, "Oh no, I hate her." Most of them, of course, are Swifties, but there was this group that was. So I think you run the risk if you're trying to do something really popular, air
yeah,
quotation marks, you're going to get kids that are really against, really for. You've got to be careful. And it's also not our job. I actually don't think I need to include Taylor Swift because they get a lot of that in their diet.
that's exactly how I feel. And
My
what's
job
popular
is to give them the other vegetables.
exactly? And what's popular now? It's not going to be popular in a few years' time.
Mm-hmm.
And you're right, they're hearing enough of it anyway. So I feel really passionately that I'm failing them unless I'm broadening their musical experience and hearing music that they wouldn't normally hear.
Yes.
That's why they come to school, right? Um, So yeah, this whole idea of building skills that are transferable, that means that every time you introduce a new piece of music, they're going to have more skills than they did the previous time. So then you can start doing repertoire that perhaps is a bit more advanced, but whether that's from one song to the other, or from one term to another, or from one year to another, it means that you're starting to grow your program because your children are becoming more experienced.
Mm.
And yeah, I just think that it's very easy to sell the children short. I really think that they can read. Reading is actually not difficult. They learn to read their native tongue. They can read notes. It's I don't know. I think it's so easy. I don't know. I just feel like for some people there's this kind of like, oh, they can't do it, but
Yeah, they can.
really,
It's
just
in a way,
encourage it.
it's like you get what you expect. You just go, I just expect you to be doing this. You put it in front of them, you scaffold, you play the games, and then they learn.
They do. They really do. And we're not, as you say, we're scaffolding it and we're supporting them. We're putting it in a really safe framework.
Mm.
So we're not handing it out and saying, okay, off you go. We're not doing that. We're breaking it down. We're taking our time with it, and so it's all perfectly safe, and there's no risk taking for them. It's just how we're unpacking
Yeah.
it.
Yeah,
And
it really just sounds like you're applying common sense, good educational practice to choir work.
yeah, probably.
That's
Yeah.
that's what it is really. We're teaching and we're scaffolding.
Yeah,
What
exactly.
advice would you give to new choral conductors? Just, want to get
Um,
started.
Yeah, my advice is go find the people that
Yeah,
that you've heard their school choirs, you like them, ring them up, email them, say, and this is what I did 30, 40 years ago. Can I come and watch your rehearsal?
yeah.
Um,
And you know what? They'll all say,
I'll all
sure.
say yes. Absolutely. Listen to lots and lots and lots of children's choirs from all around the world, and get an idea of the sounds you like, so that you've actually got some sort of a sound ideal in your head. I think it's really important before you start teaching a piece of music. So we were talking about repertoire choices before, and I was saying, for every one piece I've chosen, I've ditched another 30. So my bar is pretty high. I'm really fussy. And that's why it'll take me like almost a year before the following year to plan all my repertoire. I don't don't tend to do things at the last minute, because otherwise I just take forever, is what I'm trying to say. And I get onto the ACDA website. I I reach out to colleagues all the time. Any of my colleagues will tell you that. Claire's always texting me. I look at the programs from concerts, and I go to lots of concerts. And I'm privileged to be adjudicating a lot, and I love hearing other people's work, and that's how I hear lots of music, or at festivals or whatever. Anyway, we talked about repertoire. You asked me, so for advice, yes. Basically, go and watch rehearsals.
Yeah.
That's what I did. Lots and lots and lots of. I still do. I still love watching people work. And yeah, and listen to lots and lots of choirs. That's the other way to find great repertoire. Birrelly has loads of CDs of fantastic children's choir. Mark O'Leary does, Young Voices of Melbourne, Adelaide Voices, Young Adelaide Voices, Sydney Children's Choir. They all have fantastic websites with loads of CD recordings. So if you're choosing something that you're not familiar with and you'd rather listen to it, easy. Everything's on Spotify these days. It's so easy. But I would encourage you, before you start teaching, make sure you know every note of that piece. Don't be learning it with the children. Don't be one lesson ahead of them. Otherwise, you're determining the pace. And with the help of YouTube, these days, I love being able to introduce a piece. I always say it's my favorite, and students say, "Oh, you say that with everyone," but but it's that excitement about each piece, and sometimes with a piece it's that awe and wonder. You want them to be as completely like, and then you play them a YouTube clip and they just like, but the great thing about it is that they've seen the whole thing. Whereas, if you start just introducing a little bit each week, sometimes it can be too slow, or they only know that little bit you've taught them. And sometimes they're going to be more engaged if they've listened to a whole YouTube of it, and they've sort of they've engaged with the whole piece, and then you separate it out. So yes, love showing my children YouTube clips, and again, then they get to hear other choirs, and then you can use that as a learning tool. You can say, well, what did you like about their sound, or what about, how does it compare to your sound, or do you think your sound's the same or better, or what would you change? And inevitably I find my students are really honest. Oh wow, those vowels were really spread, or oh, I really like that beautiful resonant sound there, or no, I think we do that section better, or it's great. You get them thinking about the sound they're making.
That is amazing. Before we go, there are two more
Yep.
things. I want to
Yep.
talk to you about advocacy,
Yep.
fighting for our profession. Uh,
Yep.
as choral conductors, music educators, we are all music educators, the circles overlapping, as you say.
Yep.
What can we do? What advice can you give us around advocacy?
I don't know if I've got the answer, but I can tell you that even just at the end of last year, I had to fight to keep our Year 4 program alive. And I'm in a school that's got a really well supported music program. So, I was pretty gobsmacked. And I think part of the problem is, the moment music became part of the arts umbrella,
Mhm.
schools only have to deliver a certain amount of minutes per week. And this is what I was struggling with. My school was telling me, well, we have enough arts minutes.
Yep.
Um, and now we're trying to fit in X, Y, and Z. And so we're going to take away that music time in replacement of blah. And boys, oh boys, did I fight hard. We had several meetings, and I brought in my whole team. And it was at the end of the year when we were all like just ridiculously tired. It's always that last staff week, isn't it? When schools make their changes. And we fought like crazy and we saved it. So, and I'm in a well resourced school where music is a high priority, and yet we
So
nearly lost.
what did you do? But see, we need like obviously systemic type
Yeah.
changes too. What do you think was your power in that win?
Oh, man. It's such a good question. I was going to say we can never stop advocating. Never.
That's true.
Never, never, never. We're never going to be in a position where we don't have to. I think having an open door is really important. The more our leadership team see us teaching, the better. The more they understand what we're teaching.
Mm.
Um, why did we win that? It's a really good question.
Like your arguments must have been compelling. And in a way, it's obviously got to be at least in part because of your skill and your passion. If you're a bit shit at your job, you're probably not going to convince them to keep that section of the program. Um,
Yeah.
so obviously some of it comes down to they know you're doing a good job, but how do you convince them that what you do is more important than those minutes they have to find from somewhere else?
Yeah. Well, I think I might have used a few lines like, oh, well, we've just increased our school fees, and parents, this matters to parents, and this is why they choose our school and not such and such a school. But my colleagues who are in government schools, that's not the case. I we were willing to be. We were understaffed, and yet we were still keeping those subjects alive. We all went overload last year
Mm.
because the moment you lose it, you can never ever get it back.
Mm-hmm. That's what we've
So
been saying in our Music for Every Child Every Week campaign. Uh, don't don't give up if you can hang in there. Don't give up, because once you leave and they pop in arts instead of music, the
yeah,
fight to get that back is it's lost, or it's very, very, very a very long term, you know.
yes, yes,
But it's
yes,
hard. It puts us in a really hard position, doesn't it?
it does. And
Mm.
what they wanted to replace music with wasn't even an art subject. So we were like, well, your argument that we've got this many arts minutes, well, that doesn't hold true because you're replacing it with some, IT, whatever. I think you're right. I think we fought so passionately for it that they found it really difficult to actually say no. And I think they went back and they figured out somewhere else to put where they wanted to put it because they could see how dear to us it was and how important it was to us.
And you've got to prove to them how important it is for the children. It's actually not
Mm.
about us and our job. Um, I mean, it is, but it's not. It's we
Yeah,
believe that the children benefit from this, and we just have to
absolutely.
show them that even if they're not musically literate or interested in music, it's an important thing for
Yes,
our children to have as part of their development.
correct. And they need music when it comes to Anzac services and Easter services and Grandparents' Day and book parade and celebrations and assemblies and end of term awards and I've said to them, of course we want to be part of all of those occasions and events and performances, but the education is more important than the show and tell. But you can't have the show and tell without the education. So
Mhm,
you can't cut back our hours and then still expect us to be able to whip up something for
mhm.
a performance because the performance is as a result of the classroom practice. And that's again why it's very important that we say that even though it's year level singing, it's music education. We're not just teaching songs.
Yeah, it actually comes back to our whole theme. One of the analogies I like to use, which I haven't used recently, I have subtly, is it's a tree. Like you can't have the healthy green leaves and the beautiful blossoms if you don't
Yeah,
have branches, trunk, and roots. Like you don't have that
yeah,
stuff. You dudes, you can't have the flowers if you don't
that's it.
have that other stuff.
I love that because they do sometimes in their ignorance, they do think we can just whip up a performance
Yes.
and they don't understand what goes
Mhm.
on behind. And so you're right, it is about educate. It's actually advocacy is educating and helping them understand the process and how we get there. Yeah.
And when
Yeah.
I say I haven't used the tree analogy lately, I have very subtly because Together Sing, which um,
Yes.
Deb and I started and operate under the banner of Kodai Queensland. I designed the logo for it, and if you have a look at it, it's a
I
tree.
know. It's a tree. I love it.
It's a
And
tree.
that's about cultivate and that's about growing deeply. Yeah.
Mhm, mhm.
Yeah.
And
Love
all
it.
the lovely bits on the outside, you're not going to get that unless you have the other really important stuff.
That's it. That's absolutely right. So yeah, we can never stop. We can never take it for granted that they understand what we're doing
Mm.
and how skilled. I mean, that's the thing. We're specialists. So yes, just fight the good fight. Keep on fighting it. Never
Yeah,
stop.
I
Yeah.
love it. Before we go, do you want to hop on
Yes.
your soapbox? Though I do think we've both been on our soapbox.
Yeah. Well, I think because we're passionate, I think For me, the two most important things is just love the kids, and for me, making music is, it's number one. The music's always the children and the music, and it's what gets me up every morning, and it's I'm privileged. It's my happy place, and when students stay in touch with me and they talk about, when I was in high school with you, Miss, the words they use are things like, choir felt like a family, and our choral community, and all the kids in the music department, and that was my safe place, and that was my happy place, and I always loved being there. And it's about this safe place that we create at school for our students that love to be expressive, and we are a family. We are a music family at school, and we have our own music community within the school community. And that's what students talk to me about when they've graduated. All their memories are associated with their friends and this feeling of being in the music family. So we talk about the education is important, and we're passionate. We talk about the repertoire being so important, all of that. But at the end of the day, teaching is a human endeavor, and really it's about the way we uplift and enrich our students, and for us, we're doing that through music. But we're teaching children. That's number one. We're using music to teach them, but we're developing good human beings. We're developing expressive, soulful, good characters. And it's a privilege. Yeah.
That is the most beautiful note, pardon the pun, to finish the episode on. Thank you so much, Claire. It's been a pleasure.
I feel the same way. And, a shout out to all our music educators. We all work incredibly hard, and, we give above and beyond, and we do long, long hours and long, long days. And we do. I know that we all do it. We always prioritize the students, whatever challenges there are in our school environment, and no school is perfect. I hear so many people time and time again say, but I do it for the kids. And so thank you. A big shout out to everybody. Yeah, for your wonderful work.
Thank you, Claire. Bye.
Pleasure. Bye, everybody. Have a great teaching year.
As we know, laughter relieves stress. Don't lose sight of the funny side of life. I bet you didn't know that I have a fear of speed bumps, but I'm slowly getting over it. Thank you so much for watching our Crescendo Music Education podcast. For more information about all things Crescendo, including membership and music education resources, visit us at crescendo.com.au. Don't forget to like and subscribe.